Alright, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Brap Genius back at again with another video. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about how to become the best dirt bike rider that you could be. So first of all, there's one main real trick that most people overlook when it comes to stepping up and progressing. And that is mastering one bike. What a lot of people do is they ride a certain bike for a couple months, you know, then they feel like they're comfortable on it, and then they switch. And with your first bike, I think it's okay to do that, because you should be starting on something slower for your first bike. But the problem is, when you do this too much, you're really taking away from your own progressing. The reason that is once you start to get to that comfort level where you really feel like you know what you're doing, if you stay on the same bike because you're so comfortable, you're going to start trying things that otherwise you wouldn't want to try, because you're relearning a new bike. Every time you jump from one bike to another, you have to relearn a lot of the things about that bike. Even though you may know how to ride, each bike handles differently, and they all have their own attributes to them. So it's going to take you a couple months for you to really get an understanding of the bike itself and how it rides and everything like that. So the best advice that I can give you is really just master one bike. And you know, I say this from experience because I've ridden a YZ125, this YZ250 two-stroke, a KTM 200, and a YZ450. And I'll tell you what, I am not anywhere near as good of a rider as I could be, because I've been switching all those for years. Now I've had this YZ for I think about a year now, maybe 2 years. I've had this YZ for a little bit over a year now, so I'm starting to get a little better with it. But imagine if I had been on this YZ for 3 or 4 years, you know? The progression that I would have had would have been way more, and I would be much more accustomed to the bike than I am. Not to say that I'm not an okay rider. You know, I'm a decent rider, but I would be at a much better level. And a good example of this is my buddy Kyle. You guys will see him in some of my future videos. He has an old 90s Yamaha, I think it's a 300 or I think it's a 400 enduro bike, and he's really mastered that bike. He's had that bike for years. He's ridden it in all kinds of terrain, and I remember when he got it, and he's progressed insanely well for someone on a bike like that, because it's a decent bike, but you know, it's also very old, and most people don't do well with older bikes, or they only get to a certain level. And I'll tell you what, that dude could probably outride me, and I think I've been riding longer than he has. And you know, to each their own, but you're really only going to progress as a rider if you're out on your bike, and like I said, trying new things. So once you get comfortable on a bike, really start to push yourself to try new things that you're not really comfortable doing. I remember when I first got my Yamaha YZ125, you know, hill climbs were awful for me in general, because you know, they were rocky and that was intimidating, but also the bike wasn't made for that kind of riding. My YZ125, I'd have to be literally on the gas the whole way up the hill in the power band, or I wasn't getting up. And trying to control a YZ125 in the power band on a steep rocky hill with no experience, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. And that probably limited me in certain other aspects of riding, because I was intimidated because that bike was not meant for the kind of riding I was doing. And you know, my other buddies, they had two-strokes and they were pretty good on them. But those MX bikes, those 125cc two-strokes, you know, if you don't have any experience on them, it's going to be rough. If you want to get good, you really got to just take the time to master one bike and practice. I'm telling you, the more you get out there, the better you're going to get. Seat time, just like anything else. The more time you're on a bike and the more practice you're doing, the better you're going to get. Trying different kinds of terrain is going to challenge you and also make you progress a lot more as well. Now, I haven't been on a hare scramble, but my riding mentor, you know, he'd done a couple. And on one of the more recent ones, he said at the end, you know, everything was really smooth, but at the end of it, there was a huge, you know, section of rocks. And he said everyone was like paralyzed. They didn't know what to do. None of them had ever, you know, ridden that kind of terrain, so he flew through it because he was used to it. You know, if you ride on harder terrain, when you go from rocks and stuff like that to, you know, stuff like this, it's night and day. It's really easy. So that's the best advice that I could offer you guys, is just really get one bike, learn how it rides, and do your best you can to master it. That's what's going to allow you to become the best rider that you could be. So that's pretty much going to do it for this one, guys. If you like this video, let me know by hitting the like button. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.